this week for Better Safe Than Sorry. And this week we're going to talk about last year's Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder Awareness Day. We developed our condom campaign after all the interns were talking about it last summer about the idea of putting condoms in bars, not just pregnancy test kits in bars. So, Sydnie, why don't you catch us up to speed and let Lauren know, because she wasn't here. What did we do? How did you guys come up with the idea of the condoms?
Well, it was Daniela's idea, and then what we did is 3 of us interns one day went to downtown Bethesda, and we went to like 5 bars and told them what we were doing and asked them, you know, would you be okay with us setting up outside your bar on September 6th to make it, you know, on a weekend so there'd be a lot more people. And 2 of them came back saying that they would, but one of them was a little bit more sure, and we figured out they would be the best fit for us. So we kept in touch, and he was really great and very big on letting us just take the bull by the horns and do what we needed to do, and he was interested in learning more about it himself. So on the day, you and I posted these posters all around Bethesda of flyers to come to the bar and see what we're doing. And then for everybody who came in and out of the bar, we passed them a condom, or we asked them if they wanted one of the CDC little brochures, and we talked about fetal alcohol spectrum disorder with them.
Yeah, we actually put a display similar to this one in the bathrooms with literature about FASD prevention, focusing on preconceptional health issues. And so the women's bathroom had its own little display on a table, and the men's bathroom. And I remember a couple of the barmaids, we had asked them if they would be interested to pass out condoms. And one of them said that she felt like it would be a little bit misleading to the customers if the barmaids were giving men condoms. It would be like a come on or something. So I think that partly the idea is provocative, and it's so provocative that it's going to catch people's attention. But at the same time, I think
it's subtle enough with the bookmark.
It's a bookmark. It's covered, right?
Right.
You know, the one young lady who was a barmaid that I remember the most, she would come out and she would sit on the stairs every now and then and watch what we were doing, right? As people passed by, because people would pass by on the street and just stop and see what we were up to. And she kept listening to what we were saying. And finally, you know, we went over to talk to her. I think she and I had a very long talk about, she was an economics major. She had just finished a master's in economics, and she said, you know what you guys have is a tipping point. She said, everyone has been focused on preventing alcohol use during pregnancy by focusing on the pregnant woman, but a lot of this happens before you know you're pregnant. So what you guys are doing is saying, hey, contracept, it's very easy. You can drink as much as you want to. Go ahead and keep that, what is it, $54 billion a year industry going? Let's keep that industry going. And by the way, let's keep the condom industry going too, right? Because with HIV prevention, and she had reminded me of this, that condom sales went up dramatically. And she's in economics, so she had studied some of that, right? But with people your age no longer really being as concerned about HIV prevention, condom sales have gone down. So one of the things we did last summer is we reached out to condom manufacturers like Trojan.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
And you guys can do more of that this summer. We have already the letters that we sent last summer. But we just never, you know, I think maybe didn't spend as much time on it, didn't really have our nonprofit up and running.
I think that was it.
Yeah, and so the idea would be that we partner with a company like Trojan, and not just Planned Parenthood, who donated condoms last year. but we would partner with Trojan. They might be able to give us some money to promote awareness,
Mhm.
right? What is the one industry that we don't plan to take any money from?
Yeah, well, that's right.
Can you say that a little louder?
The alcohol industry.
And why is that?
Because no matter what we do, their sales are going to be very high.
Yeah, we're not trying to bite into their sales, but we also think it's unethical for them to be distributing a product and not educating people about the harm.
Next thing we can do is go to liquor stores and give them these.
That's a good idea. I like that.
Beer and wine
Very good
stores.
idea.
Now, my feeling is, you say give them to them, and who's actually paid for these bookmarks?
You.
Okay. Do you think I'm going to give these to a, no?
No.
No, okay, what would I be willing to do? I'm not going to take money from them in terms of, but we can sell these to them if they want to buy them, right? Can you get that? We will give them a bulk amount of these, and, I like that idea. I'd be willing to do it, but I'm not going to
We can
give
sell
them. Okay, perfect. We can sell them to the,
You have to think of how they would benefit. So you have to think of what makes it a selling point for them. Like you have to make it
Why would they
profitable.
buy?
Why would they want to buy it? Like you can talk about it and like maybe get them on your side, but you'd probably be talking to a liquor salesman who isn't the business owner.
well,
So you
and
have to
see,
think
this
about
is
it that way.
why I think you're going down on the lower end of the food chain, and it's really, for me, not where I want to be spending my time. I sat on the Alcohol and Other Drug Advisory Board for Montgomery County for 18 months, and I beat my head against the wall, just asking them to do what 42 other states have already done, which is to post warning labels where alcohol is sold to say, if you're pregnant or planning a pregnancy, avoid alcohol. And by the way, if you're using alcohol, what do you need to be doing? Contracept. Or avoid pregnancy, however you do that, right? They believed that it was not in the county of Montgomery County's best interest to be, promoting health awareness. But it's about their product. And Montgomery County is unlike a lot of counties in the nation. Do you guys know how it's different? Sydney?
They have a $30 billion profit.
30 million
30 million.
profit.
$30
million dollar profit, because they regulate the sales of alcohol through Montgomery County. So following the repeal of prohibition in 1933, what happened is all the states got to decide whether they were going to regulate the sales of alcohol or was it going to go to the counties, right? And Montgomery County, I guess because DC is right here, they were on the leading edge of deciding they wanted to regulate their own alcohol sales. And what that did is it brought in profit to the county as opposed to profit to, say, the state. And so the Liquor Control Board in our county, and there are some counties like that in the nation, Montgomery County is not the only one, but in addition to distributing the liquor licenses, which they give to, I think, about 800 different facilities. They have about a total of 20 liquor stores that they sell, through the county, the liquor. And there's a total of about 200 beer and wine stores where they sell beer and wine by the bottle. And then, the restaurants and bars, there's about 800 of those that they give licenses to. So the idea that I was proposing while I was on the Alcohol and Other Drug Advisory Board, I guess, for the county is we reached out to the Liquor Control Board and said, hey, might we do a campaign with all these establishments where they either post a sign, where alcohol is sold, or they have literature available. And, they simply said that it's up to the Health and Human Services to do that, and not them. But they're the ones making $30 million a year, okay? Which, by the way, is the same amount that we spend on what in our country? fetal alcohol spectrum disorder research. Same amount, 30 million a year was spent on FASD research. And one county brings in that in profit. Do those numbers add up?
No.
That's crazy.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And 54 billion a year the alcohol industry makes. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to promote awareness that if you use alcohol, you need to be contracepting. And why is that important?
Well, because the problem is a lot of the times you won't know you're pregnant, and then you'll continue to drink in those first couple weeks before you find out, and then the most harm can be done the late to third to early fourth week of pregnancy, and that's a lot of the time before really women find out they're pregnant, so they don't even know they're doing harm to their baby, and then once they find out, they can say, oh, I'll stop drinking and everything, and then 9 months later they have a child, and then 10 years later that child is showing difficulties, and it doesn't add up because it's so long that people don't make the connection, because it's so long after the fact that the deed is done that you don't really understand what's going on. So that's the problem. You need to hit before it happens, you know.
Yeah, I met this young woman the other day who's a banker, and I just happened to be talking with her, and she was telling me she's 26. She had a friend who just recently had a baby, and the baby was not planned. She had hooked up with a guy and, gotten pregnant, just like what we're talking about, and had gone to New Orleans to Mardi Gras or something and had a lot to drink. This is what happens, right? And not intentional. Stopped drinking after she found out she was pregnant. 9 months later, baby's born, and she's saying, whew, everything's fine. Yeah, guess what she's thinking? Baby has 5 fingers, 5 toes, 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. Baby's okay. What is she probably not aware of?
She's probably not aware of the baby's brain development and how it's not as developed as it would be if she didn't drink.
Right. And subconsciously, what do you think keeps people from wanting to understand that?
Because it's something that could have been avoided.
And do you feel like it brings shame and guilt? Yeah. And so for a lot of years, the public health community, well-intentioned as it is, has known that this is happening. Since 1981, Kathleen Sulik, one of my mentors from UNC, showed in 1981, this late third to early fourth week of pregnancy, that the major malformations happen associated with FASD. Her work was so important, it was published in the journal Science. Now, her work, that was 1981. What we're saying is people don't know about this, right? And what year is it?
2015.
2015. How many years has that been?
A lot.
Okay, let's add that up, girls, because, we all don't have a calculator, and we get it, that, that would be helpful, right? 1981, 1991, 2001, 2011, that would have been 30 years in 2011. But it's been how many years since? So it's been 34 years since her work was published in the journal Science. And still it has not changed public perception. I'm going to tell you one reason why. Is that a lot of physicians would say, well, we don't want to tell women because they're going to be shamed and they're going to feel guilty of what they've done. And I say, what do I say, Sydney?
I mean, I would say maybe they should feel guilty.
Right. We're going to have to accept some of the guilt as a society of what's happened in order to overcome this problem, right? So can you guys tell me how you would react to someone saying that?
I would say, well, if you don't tell them, it just perpetuates the problem and it makes it worse. So it's just more women are going to feel guilty. And think about how they feel however many years down the line when their child is having a lot of problems and they're upset when they find out what happened and that it could have been preventable and that alcohol caused it and that they consumed the alcohol, but no one told them. So how are they supposed to know? You know what I mean? So yeah, they might feel guilty when they tell them, but isn't that better? And then they could get better care for their child when they're growing up than waiting until the child is in like juvenile delinquency, or they're failing out of school, or they're homeless, or in drugs and alcohol. If you tell the woman before the child's born, then you can prepare for. I mean, you don't not tell the woman that your baby has Down syndrome. Like, I don't understand why there's a disconnect. Like, why wouldn't you just be honest? You know what I mean? Like, it just prevents. It's just such a sad. The whole thing is just very upsetting because it's so preventable, and it's just nobody knows. Like, I didn't know. Like, not like I read these books, and it's so. I feel like there's this whole culture that knows about it and that's trying to prevent it and trying to raise awareness, and there's just a disconnect between that big society and the lay public. Like, there's no, like, how did the cigarette industry, when did that happen? How did that become, it's because the doctors were coming out and saying, listen, cigarettes can harm your health, and like Reader's Digest came out with it, and like major public media came out and was saying it, and then people started to know, and then the cigarette industry failed for a little bit, but you know, they're still here. So like, and people know, and that's the thing, the difference is that they're knowledgeable when they buy cigarettes what's going to happen. So by taking away the knowledge from women, that's horrible, because then they don't know, you know what I mean? Like, they shouldn't feel guilty because some of them don't know, you know what I mean? Like, and that's the thing, is that people are saying, well, I've been told that one glass of wine is okay. Well, it's not. And doctors are still saying that, and the general public doesn't know, and that's the disconnect. Like, it's been 30 years, like, what's taking so long? I don't understand. Why aren't there commercials about it? Like, there's so many commercials about cigarettes and how they can harm, like how to stop smoking, and I've never seen one thing on media that has anywhere related. I had no idea about it until I got in contact with you. Like, it's just incredible that the general public is so ignorant. Like, I was so ignorant until a few weeks ago. You know what I mean? It's just crazy.
Well, so if we take a look at the media, back in 1997, I was an intern with Good Morning America while I was a medical student. And I went up to work with Susan Wagner, who was one of the producers for The Healthy Woman. And at that time, Joan London was the talent on Good Morning America. She was one of the morning news show hosts. And the medical person there was Nancy Snyderman, Dr. Nancy Snyderman. So Susan Wagner and I produced this segment on the increased rates of alcohol use by pregnant women. They had gone up by 400% from 1991 to 95. Okay, the warning label came out on alcohol in 89, and from 89 to maybe 91, 92, rates had gone down during pregnancy because people were aware. There were a lot of things in the media about don't use if you're pregnant. Now, having said that, it was all focused on pregnancy,
Right.
but at least after pregnancy recognition, women at that time were using less. Well, by 95, when the CDC had looked at the studies, they found that rates went up by 400%. Alcohol use, this is moderate to heavy use. So I had gone up there in 97 with the news reports coming out about the, from the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly saying, hey, alcohol use rates are skyrocketing in pregnancy and this is a problem. And we did a Healthy Woman segment on it where Joan London said, and Nancy Snyderman, if you are pregnant or planning a pregnancy, you need to avoid alcohol. And you need to plan your pregnancies very carefully in order to prevent unintentional exposure. Okay, that was 1997. The updated Surgeon General's warning came out in 2005, February 2005, saying essentially exactly the same thing. If you're pregnant or planning a pregnancy, you need to avoid alcohol. And you need to avoid pregnancy if you're using alcohol. Essentially, that's what's in it. They didn't say contracept if you're using alcohol. Why is that?
They can't tell you to contracept.
Well, why can't they tell people to contracept? They
There's a lot
sure
of
did
groups
tell
that are
people.
against that.
Okay, but they told people to contracept to prevent HIV, Sydney. Okay, so what's up with that?
I don't know.
Why is it that we can prevent a sexually transmitted disease like HIV that's devastating the population. And we can't do it for preventing brain
It doesn't
damage
add
to
up.
babies. It doesn't, right? People would say, oh, the reason we can't promote contraception is the Catholic Church wouldn't like it. Now, are either one of you Catholic?
No.
No. Okay, and I'm not Catholic. And not trying to call them out on it, but I don't think the Pope had anything to say about HIV prevention and condom use. Do you think the Pope did? I never heard one report that the Pope had of discontent about promoting awareness about HIV prevention using condoms. Okay? So I think you guys are onto something really good with your the idea of using condoms. I mean, I say you because we sat and we talked about it last summer about the prevention using pregnancy test kits in bars. Why did we decide that pregnancy test kits in bars weren't, you know,
Because
the
it's
optimal?
once you find out you're pregnant. Harm could have been done before you find out you're pregnant.
Right, so if you put a pregnancy test kit in a bar, you identify that the woman now is pregnant, but she may have already been drinking for 5 weeks before, right? So, now you're just new into this, Lauren. How could you see this campaign going in, say, college campuses and helping? Because, you know, 13.5% of childbearing age women, and especially on college campuses, are using alcohol at binge rates. That's, you know, at least 4 to 5 drinks in a given sitting.
Well, I was thinking that along the lines of what of how the pregnancy test kits were in bars, like how they were, that could be something that we do for condoms. Like, why not? I mean, I get how it could be spun the wrong way, but why not have like a condom dispenser and then a sign next to it saying, or like something printed out with the condom so you have to read it, like, this is why this is here.
Well, we have
you know
our-
what I mean?
We have the little
But
bookmarks.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. And if we could print those out, or if we could figure out a way to have this so it can be done all the time instead of just on times when we can go out and pass them out, like it's there all the time. And there needs to be a way that instead of just pregnancy test kits, there needs to be either literature or condoms that are constantly in place, so it's a permanent part of the bar. Or,
Right.
you
So
know,
if we're not there, they still have that
Right.
information in
Exactly.
the condoms.
right.
And when you were back at school, like a lot of you back in your colleges, you were at Salisbury, and then we had Caitlin, who went back to University of South Carolina, and Juliana went back to Loyola, and I think Carly started at High Point
Yeah.
University, and we had Natalie,
Syracuse.
and then where did a lot of the interns went all over, right? So some of you actually did presentations at your sororities and in your dorms. You were one of those, right?
Yeah, I talked to my sorority in our chapter meetings, so there was 87 to 115 girls at the time. I don't remember the exact number, but a lot. And I passed the condoms out, and you sent me 100 of them, and they were all gone. And I said, you know, take as many as you want, use it, give them to your friends, tell everybody you know about this. And they did. They did, and they took my advice. And none of them knew about this stuff beforehand, and you know, they found it really interesting, and a couple people had, afterwards were talking to me about it. They had no idea.
Right. When we did our campaign at Churchill High School with all 500 graduating seniors, and I know that was before you guys came on board, but we launched our Better Safe Than Sorry campaign at Churchill High School.
Right.
It was in, I guess, April of last year, so about a year ago. Some of the young women came up to us and said, you know, hey, that's all great and fine that you're focusing on the young women, but you need to be telling this to young men too, right? And the idea of the condom, does the young woman wear the condom? No. So what's nice about the condom campaign in that way?
Is that it targets Males and females?
Males and females, because, you know, obviously if the female has, you know, access to the information, but she's got the information on a little card with the condom, who's she gonna be giving the condom to?
The guy.
The guy, right? And so hopefully she's gonna be passing some information on to him.
Mhm.
But we could also target young men. How might we do that?
Besides the condoms?
Well, like how might we target young men in this campaign?
Education, just like, you know, serendipitously meeting people like you always do, and telling them about it, but getting them on board to be maybe interns, because
Right.
they're all women besides Nick
Yeah.
from last year.
Nick was, you know, our token male last year.
Right.
You know, this reminds me of what it must have been like for men who largely recognized that this was an issue, but because it's a woman's issue, and there were men mostly in the positions of power and positions of sort of, I don't know, the science, understanding the science, why it's not been translated to women is the same reason that we're struggling with how do we reach men with this. Because I feel like, you know, had they back in 1973 gotten more women involved in this, I think this thing would have changed sooner, right? I do think that we're missing the mark by not getting more young men involved. Next week, we have Ethan, who's going to be joining us, and he's a rising freshman at Churchill High School, our local high school, right? And Churchill's already all about our campaign. We have a rising senior at Churchill, Madeline, who both of them are going to be joining us. Madeline participated in our sort of the huge presentation we did last year for the graduating seniors. They're going to be talking about the book that's coming out, The Silent Epidemic, and giving us ideas and feedback about how it might be able to be used in the curriculum within the school system. So you guys are going to join us next week, right? And we'll talk with them. I wonder, would you guys like to just for a few minutes chat about some of the issues related to this that we're looking to have in the book, and get your feedback about it?
I really like the part about you comparing FASD or alcohol to, what was that drug called?
Thalidomide? Yeah.
I loved that, because your point is, when that epidemic came about, well, it wasn't considered an epidemic, but when
It actually was, yeah, that it was considered an epidemic caused by
right.
a drug that they used for morning sickness.
So when that came out, you know, everyone was talking about it. You know, it got shut off the drug market in the world. And that was because it had physical
Malformations,
right.
Yeah.
And with FASD, you can't necessarily see it. Yeah, you might have some facial features, but that's only a percentage of the people who have FASD. So I like how you compared that. Well, why isn't the public reacting this way to FASD? Because you can't necessarily see it. But why does that make it any less important?
Right.
And I think that's the biggest problem is that the issues caused by alcohol are all hidden. Like, most of them are under the surface, and they're really detrimental to the well-being of the person who has it. And it comes in so many different forms, and it comes in different severities, and there's different problems associated with it, but it's such a large spectrum of issues that could be prevented. Like, it's so sad, because if you put the blame on the person, like, for instance, when you went to death row, and you would put the crime on the person because they rightfully knew it was wrong, and then you compare that to the insanity, the insanity or the defense, where you know,
defense,
right?
Yeah.
So they weren't in the right mind doing it, and then you look at people who have FASD and you say they don't understand right from wrong. They think black and white. They think concretely. They don't have a conscience. They don't know, and it's not because they were like rightfully knowing that. It's just that they have brain damage, and like it's brain damage, and it's not their fault, and it's just, I mean, it's just such a tricky line, and it's so sad because it's under the surface, and that's why no one's talking about it, because they don't know, because it's not visible. Like they're born with 5 fingers or 10 fingers and 10 toes, and and everything is fine on the surface at birth and at 9 months and at 10 months and and at 5 years, but then they go to school and they start to have these problems, and then they get socially isolated because they're hyperactive and kids don't like them, and then they have the second hit of abuse and neglect at home, and then they get involved in drugs and alcohol, the third hit, and it's very overwhelming, and there's so many problems that result from it. So like when you're reading the Fatal Link and you see that there's all these school shootings that are happening and all this crime, and it all can be prevented, and it's just sad that people don't see the link between it, you know what I mean? And it's just, it needs to be.
They don't yet, but I do feel that by empowering people in your generation, and again, that's what we did in Toronto. We empowered you guys, and you're new into this, but you're so bright, and just like Sydnie and Daniela and all our interns last year, you're taking this information, going back to your college.
Yeah, definitely.
And who are you going to educate? Not just your peers, but who?
The teachers.
The professors.
Too,
Yeah,
that's so true.
What did
I
you
talked
do
to a
last
couple
year?
of my professors about it. I had a professor that I had for research methods 1 and 2, and he was on a sabbatical in the fall doing an independent study. And he came back and he went into my cognitive class and asked people, for trial runs for the experiment. And, I did it because, we got extra credit, but he was also one of my favorite professors. So I was the first one chosen to do it because he loved me. And I talked to him about what I was doing, and he was, very surprised, but he was, very impressed. So just, you have to talk about people who are not just our age, because, yes, it's extremely important, but the people that are older than you, but in the same area, same field.
Right, because then they educate the up-and-coming, psychologists and physicians and really the up-and-coming generation. And that was one of the big things I had a problem with, because I've taken, I think, 3 classes that had to do with abnormal psych, so like child and adolescent psychopathology, things along the line of that. Never once have I ever been taught about this. And I don't fault my professors, because I love them all dearly. They're very, very bright, intellectual people, and they do a really great job of educating their students, but they probably don't know. And I've studied the DSM-5, and never once have I heard, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, if it's this prevalent, I don't understand why. And if you educate them as well, and just, it only takes a minute to tell them, and then they'll tell how many more students and how many more years that they'll teach. And
then maybe, it could relate to whatever class that they're teaching.
Right.
Because I know that teacher also teaches cognitive psych, but he was on a sabbatical. So I know when I was in cognitive psych, my teacher talked about the effects of alcohol in the brain, but he didn't put 2 and 2 together with effects of alcohol in the brain preconceptually.
Right.
Or during pregnancy, right?
Yeah.
And you had written a paper while you were at school, and you got an A on it. You said you didn't actually have to do any research, really.
I knew it all from my head, from what I've learned from you, and from what we did over the summer.
Right, and you got an A on it, like just off the top. So there's a couple of, just kind of shifting a little bit, I wanted to get your perspective about a couple of issues that I wanted to include in the book, but it's going to take time to kind of weed through the science. So one of the issues is that there is a difference in the male brain versus the female brain, and how the alcohol during development affects it. So the male brain, because it doesn't have the protective effects of estrogen, is more affected than the female brain. There's different effects. And alcohol also being estrogenic. So alcohol, because of the plant-based chemicals that make up most alcohol products, many of those plant-based compounds are kind of like estrogen in the environment, So the babies the male brains actually are a little bit effeminized when they're exposed to a little bit of alcohol. So effeminized meaning they become a little bit more like females.
Mm-hmm.
And the females, because of just paradoxical ways that the alcohol affects their brain development, are somewhat masculinized. So what we see in adolescence is gender, it's called gender dysphoria. It means
Right.
you're not really comfortable being the gender that you are because you feel more like the opposite. And, you know, gender identity issues are very common in this population. So, you know, my feeling is I could write a book that it could take me 10 more years to write. Or do I get it to a point and finish it the way it is without putting some of these, you know, these other things in it? What do you guys
What you
think?
could always do is you can finish the book as it is, but then do like,
A supplement?
yes. You could, and it
Yeah.
wouldn't even take you 10 years.
No,
No,
the
you could
supplement
just-
would not take that long, yeah.
You could just do that.
Yeah, and what about the idea, I know as it is now, I have kind of some treatment, you know, recommendations, the way I approach these kids in my practice, helping look at them from the 4-domain model, and I have that at the end. I don't have that part finished yet, as you guys see, it's just in a draft. I have it now as an appendix, but in a nutshell, the book itself is kind of, it stands alone, even without that. So, should I have it be just for the lay public, like to be used in schools and that kind of thing, as the front end, and not have the appendix? Or, like, you can have abridged versus unabridged versions of books?
You can have the appendix, but it doesn't necessarily need to apply to everybody who's reading it because it's in the back.
Okay, got it.
Right.
Okay.
So you could, the majority of the book can be, you know, related to lay public, and then whoever wants to read that part can read it.
Okay.
But it's not like it's in the middle of the book where this is one chapter
Right.
that doesn't apply to me and I have to get through it
Right.
in order to read the rest of the book.
Right,
Right, that's a good
okay,
point.
okay.
Yeah.
So you feel that way?
Yeah, I mean, or you could always do it as, it depends on how far you want to go with the treatment model. If you want to write, if you want to make it more developed and more involved, you could have it as an appendix and then say, if you decide after you publish a book 2 years later, I want to write this as well, you could
Yeah.
either write it as a supplement or a second small book or a manual.
A manual,
For,
yeah, maybe
know?
I do it as a manual, and just, I mean, it's not gonna be that hard to put together with
Yeah.
all the other science things, you know, that I've written,
Yeah.
and, you know, the
because you already
protocols and
have it,
things,
yeah.
yeah.
So.
So maybe what to do is to just finish it up as it
Yeah.
is, and then get it out. We need to get it out as soon after we get back from,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Vienna as possible. So Vienna's gonna be really good, and we can talk about that. So the next talk show, we're gonna talk about the silent epidemic. We're gonna bring some of the readers together, and everybody from, you know, high school age all the way up to after college. Like, we have a 26-year-old that's gonna sit in. And then one of our sessions is gonna be with Bonnie Buxton and Brian Philcox.
I
Yes.
cannot wait.
I know,
Yeah.
me too.
And have you guys checked in with them to
We
see
need
when
to
they're
do
coming?
that.
Mhm.
Okay,
We know
so-
when they're coming, we need to check in and see what time that we can all meet.
Okay, and we're gonna do that for the No Fast. They're having, the National Organization on Fetal Alcohol Syndrome is having their upcoming spring gala. And then after that, we need to do one on the fatal link, right? Jody Crow's book.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a new book that, it's not new, it came out in 2005, before the fatal link, Message in a Bottle. It's a historical kind of recollection of fetal alcohol syndrome and that whole kind of phenomenon of our society understanding that fetal alcohol syndrome actually exists and that alcohol is a teratogen. So we'll read Message in a Bottle, and maybe that would wrap us up right before then Vienna, because, you know, we'll want to talk some about Vienna.
Oh, yeah.
Of course.
Lots to look forward to.
Yeah, lots to look forward to. So,
Can't wait.
well, I think we're on the right track for this upcoming Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Awareness Day, which is going to be And September 9th,
Yep.
yeah. And Bonnie Buxton was the one who came up with the idea, right? She and Brian, so
Yeah.
we can talk with them a little bit about that when we meet up with them.
Yeah.
All right, well, I guess we're done for today. Thanks for coming.
Bye.